Hello and welcome to episode 40 of the Insider's Guide to Project Cars 2, where today we are going to be taking a look at defending basics and how to prevent those pesky drivers behind you from taking that all-important place away from you. Now, there's a couple of important things to remember with defensive driving. The first thing is obviously you want to be successful in your defense and making sure that the other car doesn't pass you, but at the same time you want to do it in a respectful and fair manner, so much so that you avoid making contact with the other driver and you both come out the other side of the corners that you are defending into alive and still all in one piece. So with that, there's a couple of key elements and rules that I generally tend to follow. The first one is making one single defensive change of direction. If you're on the racing line and you want to defend the inside line, you moving over to the left or the right, whatever's going to be the inside for the next corner, is your one defensive maneuver. You can't then move again if, say, he goes to follow you left and then all of a sudden goes right. You can't come back and dance back over to the right. The only exception to that is if the car behind you doesn't come up alongside and basically doesn't get a slight overlap, then yeah, you could possibly, if you deem it safe to do so, move back over to the racing line slightly. But even still, it's generally a good idea to still give the racing room there for the other driver. And that's point number 2, is give racing room. And what I mean by that is you give the other driver a car width and about a half of track alongside you, either to the left or to the right, depending on whatever corner it is that you're going into. Give them that room, because then you've both got some amount of leeway before either of your two cars make contact. If you really squeeze another driver and they're not so great or confident about going alongside someone else, they're likely to panic and make a mistake, and then it's probably going to result in contact, spinning, damage, and you may both end up losing positions, or you may end up losing a position. So give the racing room and allow the driver that breathing space for you both to get through the corner safely. The last thing that I wanted to point out was making sure that you hit your braking point, so you actually slow down enough to actually make the corner, but also brake in a straight line. Once you've committed to a defensive line, stay with it. Do not change direction within the braking zone. It is going to increase the chance of you making contact with the other driver or the other driver making contact with you exponentially. So make sure that you brake in a clear, straight line and that your paths aren't going to cross over each other dramatically. It's obviously then going to increase your chance of actually making the corner as well and actually being successful in defending your position. Okay, so here we go with the first of 2 defensive maneuvers. There's going to be 2 in this clip. We're currently following myself chasing down Andrex, who's in the red and white BMW M6 GT3 car directly in front of us. And the whole kind of overtaking process starts from the exit of the Beckett's complex that we've just been through there. Coming down the hangar straight, sat in the slipstream. He goes the tiniest bit of defensive here into Stowe, but not really anything major. But his main defensive maneuver is here coming into the Vale corner. As you can see, he's there on the inside, and then I managed to make the overtaking maneuver around the outside and on the inside coming into Club. Now, we shall review this one before going on to the next defensive maneuver and evaluate why. Well, we'll evaluate the good things and the bad things that Andrex did there, because it was a good defensive maneuver. There's just a couple of things that he could have done a little bit better to actually prevent me from making the overtake maneuver. So coming from the exit of Stowe here, obviously coming into this short straight down towards the Vale chicane, you can see that I'm very close to the back of Andrex's car. I'm within a car length. He's obviously recognised that and seen that in his rear view mirrors, and therefore is going to be wanting to make a defensive maneuver to prevent me from trying to overtake coming into Vale corner, as it's a pretty good overtaking opportunity. It's quite heavy braking, roughly about 18-19 meters is the general braking distance, and you're dropping down into second gear, so It's a pretty good place to try and make an overtaking maneuver when you're nice and close, such as I am in this position here. Now, coming out the exit of Stowe, he is kind of keeping more over to the left-hand side of the track, as you can see here. He's making a more direct line towards the apex of F.O.O.L corner and is going to try and force me to go the long way around his outside into the left-hander. So he's there blocking over the left-hand side of the track and leaving room over here on the right, which, as you can see, I'm going to go over and take. I don't really have any other option. I could, if I really wanted to be ambitious and daring, I could have probably dived down his inside on the left-hand side of his car, because there is a car whips over there. But generally that's not really needed. It's very high risk, and there's plenty of room here on the outside. So I'm moving over to basically take and resume the racing line. So what he's done already is he's made his defensive intentions clearly. I guess you could say that he's made one defensive maneuver. He didn't really maneuver all that much. It wasn't really overly clear in terms of a defined change of direction. But his intention of defending the inside line was quite clear to me. So I guess he's kind of, he's made his defensive intention clear. He's defending the inside line, and then also, as you see, when we come into the braking point, we're both hitting the brakes at pretty much exactly the same time. So he's nailing his braking point as well, and ensuring that he is going to make the apex of the corner. Now, there's one thing that he could have done a lot better, which actually probably would have prevented me from making this overtaking maneuver, and that is the amount of space that he has actually left. As you can see, he's situated in the center of the track. If we jump to Andrex's view, you can see there's relatively equal amounts of track on either side of his car. If I come over to me, I'm right over towards the right hand side, and then I'm coming into and actually approaching this 50 brake marker board on the right hand side. You can see I'm right up against the curb and the white line here on the right hand side, and trying to open the corner up as much as I can for myself. Now, if Andrex was over here with me, basically exactly in the space between where my car is currently situated and where his car is currently situated, it would have been much more difficult for me to make the overtaking maneuver, because he would have opened up the apex of the corner a lot more for himself, so he would have been able to carry a little bit more speed in towards the apex, and basically that's the speed difference coming in and turning in is going to be, with this current setup where he's there in the middle of the track and I'm right here over on the far right hand side, the speed difference once we actually come into the apex is going to be quite high in more my favour. As you can see, my angle of attack coming into the corner is much shallower than Andrex's. Andrex's corner is very, very tight. He's made it very tight for himself, therefore he's got to slow down even more to ensure that he hugs the inside line and avoids making contact when I come in, as you can see, in towards the apex. And actually, as you can see here, no, he's not on the brakes. But anyway, as we come into here, you can see that he's in the middle of the track. However, if he was a car whips further over to the right hand side and basically filling the space between our two cars, the speed difference between myself and him would have been much closer. He wouldn't have had to slow down quite as much coming into the apex, and even though we probably would have still been side by side, he would have been there basically when it comes to this right-hander, or potentially even in a position where he's slightly ahead of me, because he would have been able to carry a bit more speed through the apex and would have better matched mine. Because obviously I was there on the outside, I had to go the long way around Andrex. I would have been here on the inside, but if he was positioned closer to me on the entrance, so around here, and he was in between our two cars, and we basically stayed side by side through the apex, he probably would have carried a little bit more speed, probably got a little bit ahead of me, and then I would have been in a position where I'd have his car pretty much directly in front of me and making it very, very tight, and the possibility for him to pinch me coming into this right-hander here. Now, a pinch is a bit more of an advanced maneuver, so I won't necessarily talk about that, but because he was so far over to the inside of the track, yeah, that was basically the deciding factor that allowed me to actually get the position. So when you are defending, obviously you want to give the opponent racing room and give yourself racing room, but also don't forget to give yourself the best opportunity and the best chance of still making that defensive maneuver stick and preventing them from overtaking you. Obviously, if I'd come over here to the left-hand side, Andrex probably would have followed me initially over to the left and then possibly even shot over to the right to take the racing line. Because if I was there all the way over on the left-hand side, I would have had to slow down an awful lot more, and he would have been able to defend the position relatively easily. So make sure you're not defending clear air too much, or trying to basically position yourself to give your opponent the least possible chance of making the overtaking maneuver actually stick. Now, we shall accelerate this up a little bit more, and we shall talk about the second defensive maneuver. There was actually one just here as well, as you probably saw, because because we were very, very close to each other coming out of the F.O.O.L chicane. Tell you what I'll do is I'll just let it run from here. As he was very, very close, he was basically there to kind of threaten me a little bit. As you can see, my run through turn 1 wasn't all too great. He's right there, so I kind of take a bit more of a defensive maneuver, leaving room on the outside, but as you can see, I was actually squeezing him. Well, not necessarily squeezing him, but I was giving him a lot less room in comparison to what he was giving me. Now, naturally, this part of the track is a fair bit narrower than on the approach into Club Corner, but you can see I've left him a car width room there on the outside if he does want to take it, but I'm forcing him to go to the outside. Now, Andrex doesn't actually choose to pull up alongside me, and is instead basically trying to set himself up for a decent run coming through the exit of the loop here, and trying to get himself a decent run coming down the straight here, but he does drop a little bit too far back. So what am I not going to do? I'm not going to defend clear air. I'm going to take my usual racing line coming into the corner, and obviously he's not really going to do anything to threaten me with trying to take that position. So we'll continue to fast forward on to the point that I actually wanted to talk about. We're just actually coming up to lap cars at the moment and just being patient for them to move out the way, which they do so. And then the next defensive maneuver, if I rewind it back, you probably saw that I made a slight mistake there coming into the braking zone here. So if I play this out, you'll see that I run deep coming in here. I don't get the car tucked into the apex anywhere near as much as I needed to, and it's allowed Andrex to get right up on the rear wing of my car coming out onto this back straight here. So at this point, obviously, I would have recognised that Andrex is right there behind me. So what am I going to do? I'm going to move over to the left-hand side to defend the inside line, and as you can see, again, I'm not giving him quite as much room this time, and unfortunately there was a spinning car in front of me who I ended up hitting, which in the end caused me to spin out, as you see here, and I lost the position. Which is rather unfortunate because it would have been quite a good defensive maneuver. So if we jump back to the perspective of Andrex and talk through this with the chase cam, you can see he's got the run on me coming down this straight, or shall I say he's very, very close to the rear of my car and is basically in with a decent chance of trying to make an overtaking maneuver. So I move over to the centre, or start moving over to the left of the track to basically block the inside line. Andrex chooses not to follow me and just continues to go straight and resume the normal racing line. So at this point I've obviously recognised that, and instead I've made my one defensive maneuver, which is me moving over to the left, and now I'm basically holding my line. Now, as you'll see, what I'll do is I come slightly back over to the right-hand side a little bit, which is what I was talking about with regards to what Andrex didn't do, and I've given myself a little bit more room coming into the corner. I'm very close to the centre of the track, but I'm not quite fully there. There's probably about another car width to my left, and I'm car width difference, shall I say, to the amount of track that's on my left-hand side in comparison to what is on my right. And obviously I'm much closer to Andrax's car, and Andrax is there right on the racing line, quite nicely up against the curb. Now, we both hit our braking point at pretty much exactly the same time. Andrax does have a bit of an overlap on me. We're both side by side, but obviously where I am further to the right and opened up this corner a fair bit more for myself, obviously I'm able to carry much better speed coming into the corner and basically forcing him to have to go the very long way around this rather long left-hander. So it's going to make it very difficult for him to actually get around my outside. Now, as you see, as we continue to come through the turn, I've actually managed to hold my position. I'm there quite comfortably in front of Andrax. It's just unfortunate that there was this BMW that had spun in front of us, because I probably would have been able to carry on in towards the apex of Luffield. Andrax does make a tiny bit of contact with the car, but at that point that's irrelevant. And this is the back marker that we had previously just lapped. But if that guy wasn't there spinning in front of us, I would have been able to hold the position quite nicely. So playing this clip, or this manoeuvre, through once more. Obviously he's there right behind me. Make my defensive intentions known with the one manoeuvre. Give myself plenty of room, break in a straight line, give him racing room, and then that's basically the position hold, or position held, until he made contact with that BMW there. So the final clip that we're going to take a look at is here in these LMP1 2016 cars. We're currently in the chase cam view of TX3 Endless, and I am in the Toyota directly in front of us. Now, this defensive maneuver by myself was actually kind of instigated from coming into Parabolica here. You see Endless present himself in the mirrors, and I had a quick glance at my mirrors during the braking zone, and I actually missed my turning point. Gave him a pretty decent opportunity to come into turn 1. Now, with these LMP1 2016 cars, you can also use the hybrid energy as basically a defensive measure to try and defend from cars behind. That was obviously the defensive move there, squeezing him over to the right hand side, and Endless actually ends up outbraking himself coming into turn 1, and I am able to retain the position because of it. Now, obviously he's playing very fairly, as this is actually a league race. And if he had basically carried on straight across the chicane, obviously he would have got the slowdown penalty, which he would have needed to give up time for, but he probably also would have been penalised by the league stewards that we have for the racing league that we're running to basically reverse the position. So if we come from this point here, obviously, as I was saying, you can use the hybrid KERS or hybrid energy or KERS, shall I say, as defensive measures to basically try and give yourself the best opportunity. Now, here at Monza, the start-finish straight is pretty important. It's where the cars reach their highest speed around the circuit. So trying to save your hybrid energy for the start-finish straight is a pretty good idea, especially when you're trying to defend against an Audi, which has a natural straight-line speed advantage over the Toyota and Porsche through its engine. It produces a lot more, not a lot more, but a bit more horsepower than the Porsche and Toyota do when off of hybrid boost. Now, at this point, we're just running our usual racing line, just coming down the centre of the grid boxes here at Monza, as that's the normal racing line, basically the shortest route around the circuit. And then Endless is picking up the slipstream of me in front of him in the Toyota. Now, I haven't actually made my defensive manoeuvre as of yet, even though I'm starting to slowly move over to the left-hand side of the track slightly to basically take up a position on the racing line for the entry to turn 1. And as you can see at this point, Endless is moving over to the right hand side, wanted to take the inside line coming into turn 1. Now, this maneuver was a little bit more aggressive, and basically something that you can do if you know that you're going to end up losing the inside line to the car that you are trying to defend from. Now, at this point, obviously there's a fair bit of a speed difference between Endless and myself. At this point, Endless is at 332 kilometers per hour, and I myself is at 318. So it's quite a significant speed difference right there. Sorry, if we jump back to Endless and continue to play this through, you'll see what I'm basically doing here is I'm moving over to the right hand side with Endless, knowing that I'm going to end up losing the inside line. But what I'm trying to do is squeeze them as much as possible over to the right hand side as we start to approach the braking zone. Now we come very, very close to contact just there. Fortunately, we didn't make contact, but you can see we're about 250 meters from the corner, and the braking point in these cars is around about 160 meters. You'll see it relatively soon. There's a white line across the track just here, and it is literally like a car length. So around about here is the braking point, just after that white line, but before the 150 brake marker board. And where I squeezed Endless right over to the right hand side of the track, he is very, very tight to the apex of the corner, and he actually gets on the brakes at the 150 brake marker board, trying to outbrake me, who brakes at the normal braking point. And then, basically, when it comes to turning into the corner is really, really tight for him. He's carrying more speed because he's braked 5 to 10 meters later than he needed to in order to make the corner. And then obviously it being tighter with him, he does manage to come back over to the middle of the circuit, but ideally you would want to be out here on the far left as close to this white line as possible to try and open up the corner, and then you can carry a little bit of downforce with the LMP1 cars actually coming into even these slow speed corners, but it gets to a point obviously where mechanical grip more takes over. But either way, at the point that he starts to turn in, he's essentially carrying too much speed for the front tyres, whilst also obviously trying to brake and slow the car down, and he ends up locking the inside tyres, running deep into the chicane and having to take to the escape road. Now, if we come back a little bit and go to the perspective of what I was actually seeing at the time, obviously coming down the start-finish straight here, I was watching Endless in the rear view mirror, and I see him there move over to the right hand side looking to take the inside line. So as you probably saw, there was a little twitch on the steering wheel to drive my car further over to the right hand side of the circuit, rather than continuing coming down to the left. So I'm taking more of a line here rather than a line off that way. Basically wanted to try and block him from taking the inside line, but the speed difference is so great that he comes up rather quickly. I recognise that and start to straighten out, but I still want to make it as tight as possible. And then what I'm going to do, just as we're coming in towards the braking zone, is move myself back over left and give myself the best position possible for making the corner. Obviously, I managed to hit my braking point, but what I also managed to do, as you can see here, is I've managed to get myself back on the racing line, and I've opened up the corner for myself. And I did turn in a little bit late and didn't quite make the apex on the inside, but even still, if Endless did manage to make the corner, he would have been here on my outside. Even if I did manage to keep it within the confines of the track, he would have been here on my left hand side, very, very slow. And I probably could have given him room coming into the second apex if he was still there. I knew that he had taken off to the escape road and was basically jumping the chicane, which is why I went ahead and took the second apex. But even if he was there, I probably would have been able to give him a little bit of room, but also have enough of an overlap to actually hold on to that position as well. So you can see here, I've squeezed him right over to the right hand side of the circuit, not giving him much room at all. He's actually straddling the white line. As you can see, he's got about a tyre's width more room before he's actually fully off the circuit. I move back over to the left after having squeezed him all the way over to the right hand side and lost the defense in trying to hold that inside line coming into the corner. I've gone back over to the left to resume the racing line to open up the corner for myself. Endless hasn't really followed me. He's followed a little bit coming back towards the middle of the track and is leaving racing room there on the outside. But yeah, it's basically I squeezed him so far over, he missed his braking point and ran deep. So you can pressure people into mistakes like that, squeeze them into corners and make it tight for them, which gives you a much better chance of actually retaining the position. So I think that's pretty much going to be it for the basics of defensive maneuvers. Obviously, make sure that you only perform one defensive maneuver or change of direction. Give racing room to the other guy, so leave a car whips on the outside or the inside, depending on where they are when coming into the corner. And then obviously make sure that you know your braking point and you brake in a straight line to basically give yourself the best opportunity to avoid making contact with the other guy. Because even if you do lose the position, the worst thing that you could do is end up making contact with someone, getting damage, potentially even spinning yourself out as well with the contact. Because usually they're going to be coming from behind you, and when you get hit from behind you, you usually end up the one being spun or punted off wide on the exit of the corner. So yeah, that's going to conclude it for this episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I shall try and get back to you as soon as I possibly can. But other than that, thank you very much for watching the episode, guys. If you've been enjoying the series, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. I'd very much appreciate that. But hopefully I shall catch you in the next episode. But until then, have fun and take care.